Good morning, everyone. We are in the Burning Girls and how to bring someone back from the dead. And we have some new people here. I think we should go around in the room. And when you say your name here, you should put your hand up because then they can see you. I mean, they can see me. And then I'll come to everybody on the computer. Judy, would you like to start?
Yes, Judy Feldman.
Sue Roberts.
Karen Zeller.
Gail Baghdad.
Chuck Baghdad.
Myrna Tyson.
Mary Schuster. Andy Amon.
Ellen Gusson.
And on computer we have, and you can wave too. Alice, Lynn,
Oh, you're doing that.
Barb, Julie, and Sandy, who's
Her just never phone.
her camera's on. So, all right, Lynn, her hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to think about how I was going to deal with this story when I read it first and then second and then third and
And I'll preface for those of you who are new, Lynn used to be, you'll know by the end of the hour, used to be a high school English teacher. So that's why she was thinking about how was she going to present this.
well,
Go ahead.
I'll tell you, after I turned 80, my mortality kept slapping me in the face and started thinking more about death. And I took this into, I had to reframe this whole story. And I reframed this story in terms of Judaism.
Great.
And I think it's a story about how to deal with grief and loss and memories.
Yes.
And to me, this is a person who is coming to grips with this deep grief and thinking about what do you do in terms of grief? How do you deal with it? And there are all kinds of images in here, but when he finally or she finally finds her beloved, the imaginings, I mean, our minds, like I said to Gary the other day, do you imagine your own death? I mean, how do you imagine death? And I think this is a story about how do you imagine death? How do you, I mean, Judaism does a lot with this. I think Psalm 23 is so, walking in the shadow of death. And what you imagine death to be. And these are all kinds of images of that. So I don't know. I sort of tried to not make it more concrete for me than crazy. Anyway, those are my perceptions.
Okay. I have Gail, Mary, Ellen. Gail, and then Alice.
Okay, I also saw it the way you did. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, but I'll learn.
Lynn, that's Lynn.
Lynn. But I saw it as light. I saw it as a mother who would do anything to just spend a moment with their child, with her child. I read this yesterday waiting for my client. I'm a caregiver to come out of her doctor's appointment. She's 91, and I let her read this as a 91-year-old person. And she said she had an experience with her mother. She was in a family of 8, and she could sing. And she had promised her mother that she would sing some kind of song that the mother loved when she died. And when the time came, she just couldn't do it. And it was the mother, if you take it and reverse the whole thing, who was able to be alive again, to move this lady. She said she literally was moved from her seat to we would call it the bima, and sing the song. She doesn't know how it happened. She doesn't remember walking, but it was her mother who got her there.
Oh, my God.
Now, there's a lot. I have Mary, Ellen, Alice, Barb. Mary.
So I looked at it, it's very universal. Child, mother, you can reverse roles. I think it's very universal. I think it's the process of grief. And the person trying to handle that grief and even imagine their hospital room with the bed. They're trying to imagine what the person that they're losing is going through.
Right.
And I think at times the thorns and then in the pain, I think that's the pain of grieving. And I think you go through a cycle. That's why Jews grieve for a year. They show up at services. For other people, there's minions. I mean, some people go every day, all the time. So there's always a minion for support. So I think that it struck me as just the grief process of trying to come to terms with the grief.
Right.
Your friend having to sing the song is coming to terms. And there are different parts of that as you move along. And I think that's why there were different parts of the story.
I
Ellen,
agree. Well, I agree I think I agree with what everybody said. And I think your story about the mom kind of proves it because it helps. It would have, depending on when you read it or whatever, we all have a different thought process. And I'm sure when we go through, a spouse or whatever the most awful is, when I went back to read it the second time, the title is something about how it's hard to lose somebody.
no, how to bring someone
How
back
to bring
from the
someone back.
dead.
But the very first, here, let me go to the story because where it's set, I can't see. I thought, having read it once before, it hurts to bring someone back from the dead. That's the sentence that I wanted. And it was repeated in the beginning, but I started numbering it. It's really only said 3 times, I think, twice. It may only be twice, and I thought it was all through the story. But you read it and you're thinking about grieving and what the process is. And as the story got further, there were specific examples because it was it said she, so it was the deceased. And I think that was helpful, and well, at least on the second reading, I'm not sure I would have thought that the first time, in the sense that, okay, this is one person's story, obviously. We all take what we agree with and what we don't agree with, from the story. But it becomes universal, even though it, may have been universal before, because we each get out of it, a different thing. And so in that, for everything that's been said, I think it's very meaningful. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I have Alice, Barb, and Judy, and Andy. Alice.
Yeah. Ellen, after so many people have spoken, I agree with a lot what you've said. I really thought it was the whole grief thing. And yeah, I think all of us have gone through somebody close to us who has died, and what your thoughts are. I don't know. It's just, I kept thinking, I don't know. Somebody said their daughter. I only read the story once. So did it say it was her daughter?
No.
Okay. See, I thought, see, you know what? I think everybody
Mother-daughter.
personalizes. I thought of my mother,
Yeah.
and, everybody, I'm not going to go into detail, but my mom died in the hospital, and I went to see her and she was already gone. But so it was like, can I bring her? This brought back a lot of memories. Like, can I bring her back to say what I wanted to say? No. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you can't bring them back, but you're going to make the journey anyway. You're going to find a way to grieve. Everybody, I just read something in the paper, one of these advice columns about people grieving, and, everybody grieves in different ways. And so, you're going to make the journey. Everybody's going to make the journey somehow.
I like that. I like
yeah,
that.
that's true.
Barb, you're next, then Judy, Andy, and Merle. Barb, go ahead. And I unmuted you.
Okay. I thought this was a story also about resurrection and bargaining and abandonment. What I mean by abandonment is that if you're grieving and you may feel as if you don't go through this process, that you are abandoning this person on the other side. But I think that as far as resurrection goes, I feel that any of us who have lost anybody who's close to us, you want to resurrect them. You want them to be with you again in however manner you choose. And this was a very hard story for me to read at this point, but I find comfort in it. I identified with it. I don't know if I found much comfort, but I did identify. And I think a lot of these feelings of bargaining, if I go through and if I go through all of these machinations, will this person be still with me? And it's not, it's a process of dealing with grief.
Agreed, agreed. I have Judy, Andy, and Merle. Judy.
Last time we met, I had already read this,
Yes.
but obviously in the interim, I read it again a few times. But people had died in the interim.
Ooh.
Oh. So you read it differently.
Yeah.
And, I found that the most amazing part about this story.
Wow.
I do agree with everything that everyone said, and I have to say, Alice, I really loved your approach. I think you have to read it differently because we all are working through this concept. But don't read it after someone has died.
Oh,
I will tell you that. But it's true. I think when you read something and then you go back to it years later and you read it again, you come back to it with a different perspective. I'm sure this story will have a different perspective for me as I get older, but right now, it's a pretty painful story.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Okay, I have Andy, then Merle and Lynn. Andy.
Okay, so this is just very different than anything that's been said. But I cannot remember the author, but this woman is a scientist and I can't even remember the name of the book, but they are known books. And she relates the process of death and what happens to our bodies afterwards. And I felt like underneath this
Elizabeth
story.
Kubler-Ross?
No, no. No, it's much.
It's a
more
fiction?
No,
Oh.
no.
Okay.
No, underneath this story and this thing about grief, which is all, there's a lot of metaphor and, description that's not so good. But I felt like that was the reality seeping in, that our bodies disintegrate and what happens to them. And it's not pretty. And so I was kind of tainted by that, but I think it was a reality that had to be there. That's there.
Interesting. Okay. Merle and then Lynn. I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay. I agree with Barb. This is a story about resurrection, and it had a fairy tale quality, and we can think of fairy tales where Sleeping Beauty and so on, where the person is resurrected. But the truth is, with medical science, we are resurrecting people all the time. I can think of a man I know who was resurrected 3 different times, once for a heart attack, once for a stroke, and another time for a second stroke. And the third time, I'm telling you, I think they're sorry they resurrected him. Because what happens is with medical science, yes, you can bring a person back to life, but what is the quality of the life? And
Agreed.
and the years and years that have gone on since the third resurrection, and that maybe sometimes we need to accept death and understand that we have to let the person go. And that to resurrect them might actually make their life more painful than if.
And yours, in your life.
Yes, absolutely. So now that modern science is so advanced, we can resurrect people. But I think the idea at the end where she says, you can't really bring a person back to life. I think that is accepting that you have to let the person go and just love the memory of the person, let them be inside you. And, that's it.
Yeah. Lynn.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Merle just said. You can cry, it won't help. All the things, this whole last page here is just, I mean, you You can jar her, you can use the Heimlich maneuver.
Yes.
You can play music, you can take the tube out, you can, those are active efforts to bring this person back to life. And none of that is going to work. That last line tells you, none of it is going to work. You can cry, it won't help. I'm not sure that's true, but I think she's extending this metaphor. I think back on page 68 is her, I think her answer to this is you will always know her. She is young and she has long blonde hair. She is young and she has cherry red lips and hair black as a raven's wing. She is old, so old that she is dead, with short white hair almost all fallen out. These are the stages of knowing when the person was alive, these various stages. And really, to me, after my mother died, I knew that I was healing and that I was bringing her back to life by quoting her. I would quote all the things she used to say to me. And to me, that was a sign that she was still alive because I was bringing her back to life. So trying to bring the person, and we all, the grief is just, there are physical manifestations of grief here. You want to vomit, you feel sick to your stomach, watching the person suffering or knowing what they're going through. It will hurt. All of those things of trying to come to terms with all of this. But as you heal in this process, you are being active and actually going back to the legacy of the person. And that in Judaism, I think, is the heart of it. What is the legacy that the person leaves behind? That's how you bring a dead person back to life. So,
Very nice. Yeah, it is true. Yeah. Evie, and I unmuted you. Go ahead.
Well, I found this so difficult that I almost just did not tune in. And then I was a few minutes late because I was on Facebook and all of a sudden saw the death notice of somebody that was on our Israel trip maybe 10, 12 years ago, which was our first trip. And I was really kind of stunned to see this. So I just wanted to respond to that and so forth. So I was out. But I was thinking in terms of, as I was reading this beautiful eulogy that was written by this woman, by her son, and realized how much I didn't know that. And my thought was, as we're going through this, we're also resurrecting ourselves in terms of how we see the person and how, as there were a couple of anecdotes in this very recent thing, and realized how I kind of misinterpreted something that was said to me, and just a whole evolution. And we also, a friend of ours, son was killed by a car earlier this week. A lot of stuff going on and so forth. But I guess my point is, as we're going through the process of different stages, we're changing as we see the person, and as we remember them. And I to latch on to what Lynn was saying, there are times where I've heard one of my kids say to me, "Oh, you sound just like grandma." And my response now is, "Thank you." Whereas before I would have been, "Oh no,
Here, here,
I
here.
just, because we're responding differently, we're feeling differently at
Yes.
different stages."
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my thought.
Sandy, go ahead.
I just remember when my dad was passing and he had cancer that had metastasized. He was 97. He was suffering so. And my dear friend who was she was a children's doctor, she said to me, talk to his doctor. He must give him something very, very strong. And I said, okay. So I went to my father's doctor and I told him, please, you must give him something. He's just suffering so. And this is the end. And he said, what? You want me to play God? And this doctor was my doctor at the time, too. I never went back to him again.
I was just gonna say, not anymore.
Never
It's a-
went
it's a
back.
pretty awful thing.
So-
That's
The evolution of medicine is a serious
Dad did-
relation point.
Dad did suffer through it, and then he passed. And over the years, my kids and my grandchildren all talk about him. And we say, because I was never close to my dad. I loved him, but he was just a sweet old man. He was old when I was born. And I never really, attached myself to him. And over the years, we said there was never anyone more honest, more straight than Grandpa. He was so good as a businessman and everything, so honest. And he just never really bothered any of us. He never wanted to bother us. He was such a good person. And that's how we've brought him back. We all talk about him.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's beautiful. And Lynn said that as well. Lynn, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to propose another theory about the story.
Okay.
And I want some reaction, and it could be way off. I am wondering if this dead is not a literal death, but when we feel like the walking dead, when we are in the depths of depression or despondency or grief or shame or guilt or whatever, that these might be the stages that we go through in trying to come out of that. And I was thinking about in different pieces of literature that I've taught, the forest seems to be a central symbol, the woods, the forest, in terms of, being in the dark. You will travel a long ways in the dark. And this is just another thought that came to me as I'm reading the story. I would like your, reaction to that.
All right. Judy, then Mary, then Claire.
I'll respond to Lynn's comment. I think there's a merit to that. I think this story leaves itself open to a lot of interpretation, but I have to tell you about an embarrassing situation that happened to me after reading the story.
Ooh.
I had to go to have a necklace of mine fixed, the clasp. And I went I'm new to Highland Park. I didn't want to go back to where I'm used to. I went to a new place. And I walked in and I explained and I talked to the man and he told me his name. His name sounded very familiar. I said, I was on a Children's Bureau board with someone with that name. And he said, oh, that was my wife. Now he said, that was my wife.
Yes, yeah.
So I, having just finished the second, said to him, for which I'm mortified, is your wife still alive? Now, I would have never asked that before I read this story. I swear to God. And he said, yes. And I said, will you tell her I send my affections, blah, blah, blah. I came home and I told my husband, he was mortified. How could you do that? So I'm saying this story elicits a lot of things in us that I don't think I've had to face. I've never faced it quite like this.
Right,
So
right.
I appreciate her forcing me to look at this. But my reaction wasn't great. I'm embarrassed by what I said and what I did, but
Now, you asked about her. Okay, I have,
It's understandable.
Mary, Claire, and then Alice. Mary.
I agree that I think the story is about death. I mean, I agree, a grief, because but we all go through many griefs throughout our lives. And to me, it's just a personal depression. It's all whatever we feel.
Yeah.
And I think that you can take pieces of this, and it's absolutely true what you said. And some of us have experienced, I think most of us have it at a point of our lives, unfortunately, as it goes.
Sadly.
Live long enough. And, so we've all been through some of that. Some of us have had really, like our spouses or our children, or, some people have just been a friend. It's been a little bit more removed. or it's just personal things, you lose your job. You lose your
Right,
livelihood.
right.
You lose, there are all sorts of
Agree.
types of loss that cause some grief.
True,
And
true,
and
true.
and and there are different levels of grief. I think this is a little darker than if I just, lost my job and was looking for a new one. I was a little depressed than versus, my husband. It's, so I think you have to, measure it. But we've all had some of these feelings, and that's where I meant when I said it's very universal, because I think we've all gone through something. Claire.
Karen.
That's okay.
Once you have a mental.
I know.
That's it happens to me.
So I have
Good try,
three
Karen,
little
Karen.
points.
Yes.
One is the role of anger in grief.
Oh.
When I first read this, I thought, "Ooh, this lady's got some anger issues."
Never thought about that.
Whoa. And so I think that we have to acknowledge that anger is part of grief, and how do you choose to work that out? And so that was what I was reflecting on first. Second, your comment about the woods. I just came from watching the middle school presentation of Into the Woods. And my husband and I were talking about the symbolization of the woods, and that throughout the ages, the woods have always symbolized the unknown, the mystical, the magical,
And Shakespeare.
and so she does talk about the woods. And the other little thing that I resonated with was, did I mention the skein of wool?
Oh, I was gonna ask about that.
And
Thank you.
she unwound the wool as she walked.
Yes.
So that was the sense of hopefulness, that once she found the Minotaur, she could turn around and walk back on the strand of wool.
Right, find her way
Uh,
back.
Yeah. So those were my three things.
Very nice, very nice. Alice and then Barb.
Memory.
Wait a minute.
Specifically.
Oh,
Oh, no, yeah. Alice,
Yeah.
Andy, then Barb.
okay. This is, I'm gonna take a little bit from all of you. I can't even remember everybody who spoke for me, but Lynn, I really agree. The whole thing about her stories being, that she uses fairy tales is kind of some of her source material, is that these, like Karen just said, what do the woods symbolize? They kind of, over the years, kind of symbolize similar things. And, everybody comes to something they read from a different place. And so that's why, at first when I started reading this story, I said, I don't get this. I don't like it. But all of a sudden, it's sort of like gradually, oh, she's talking about the woods. She's talking, and it's like all of a sudden I had things to kind of hang my hat on, so to speak. There were things that, oh, I can see, that's relates to me. So I think she did a good job in a very short story of giving you a lot to think about.
Yeah, yes. Andy and then Barb.
Well, just to say about Into the Woods, we have plots in a natural cemetery.
Ooh.
And we've been there, you walk on a path through the woods, and we've seen this place where there's a tree, and it does happen to be in a Jewish section of a natural place it's around Buffalo Grove, and it's at Willow Creek, but that was such an image for me. I did think about that as I walked into the woods.
Yeah. That's
I actually
powerful.
I find it very comforting.
Okay.
That's where
Yeah.
I'm gonna rest.
Okay, I have Barb, Mary, then Merle. Barb, go ahead. I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay, so getting back to the resurrection thing. I think that memory is resurrecting, and it just so reminded me of this. I just looked it up because it just popped into my head. And it's phrase, so long as we remember them, they are alive. And
Right.
certainly that is a poem that they read during
Yes.
this quite often.
Mhm.
And and that's true. As long as there are people around to remember them and to remember who they were, they are still with us. You can't physically bring them back. You can't. I suppose you can talk to them. They may or may not.
Oh, I do.
And, but, this is a very, this is a very Jewish thing that.
It is.
That is very meaningful to me.
I agree. Mary, then Merle.
Okay, it's one thing, it's that the string of wool helps her get out of the woods or find a way back. In fairy tales, you drop breadcrumbs, whatever. You have to find a way out. And that's sort of it. And the other thing is and she mentions the wool being dust bunnies at one point. And that's what memories are. They're not, when it first happens, something horrible happens, but your thoughts about it are really difficult and poignant and hurtful and thorns and pain, whatever. 10 years later, your memories become softer and fuzzier. I mean, that's just the way our minds work, and more tolerable. None of us remember the pain specifically of having childbirth. We'd never do it again. I mean, everybody said exactly. But the point is, as you get away from it, I remember I have funny stories to tell about it. I mean, my kids, and that it changes. The other part of it, if you notice in front of the book, she's carrying a string around.
Very good, Mary. Also a teacher. Kudos to our members here. I have Merle and then Gail. Merle, go ahead. I'll unmute you. Oh, no, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Someone told me a joke recently about it's easy to get into your 80s, but it's hard to get out of your 80s. And
Can't wait.
I was at Sunset Foods, that is the crossroads of the world. And I ran into
Highland Park, Sunset.
So I ran into someone I went to high school with who's my age, just turned 80, and she said her husband had died, and I didn't know that. And she said to me, she wakes up and she thinks he's going to be there. So in her memory of, it's like she resurrects him every day by thinking he's going to be there. And then she told me that another person we went to high school with lost her husband one day after this woman did, and the other husband died on the treadmill, also somewhere around 80. And I thought, this is how people cope. And I said, oh, you're so lucky you have your children around. She said, yes, children and many friends. So that's how people get through it.
Exactly.
But, this thing about you can't resurrect them. But again, your memory plays tricks with you. And she wakes up thinking this is going to be there. So I never even thought about that. But it was really, it was very enlightening for me to hear someone say that.
Yeah, good point, Merle. Gail, then Lynn. Gail.
I was amazed when I first opened the book to see that this story was only 6 pages long. And the amount of work that I put into 6 pages, I've never reread stories. I just don't like to do that. I can't tell you how many times I read it over and how each time, like a little piece of string, I pulled a little memory that I really haven't finished working with. And so I was tweaking a lot of those things. But by the last time that I read it, I was already at the point where I had forgiven and I had learned how to live with certain things. And I think that's where we all should be. Hopefully we get there. I had trouble with my father for so many years, and then I forgave him. He wasn't alive anymore, but boy, I felt like I was 10 pounds lighter.
Exactly.
So it just like that hard work, reading the 6 pages was hard work.
Yeah. Lynn, before you go, I've been thinking about what you said about the stages of depression. And at the end, how to bring someone back from the dead on the last page. There's no way to bring someone back from the dead, but you will make the journey anyway. And I think people can come back from depression. And that's where I think the difference is. Do some people not come back from depression? Yes. But I think that's another type of story. So I think it's about grief. I have Lynn, Evie, and then Judy. Lynn.
I'm going to extend that as we've been talking. I think it's not only about grief, it's about loss. And if you use that term loss, I remember when I retired and I went through a huge depression because I was losing my identity. What were you? What are you? I still say I'm an English teacher.
Yes, you are.
No, we will always.
Always, Lynn, always.
However, the loss, I mean, we're all going through a little bit of losing our minds. No, I mean, not literally. Well, maybe literally, but anyway.
Yeah, literally.
So that loss that we don't have as sharp memory as we used to, or that the jobs we used to have, and just the idea of loss and it took me a year to work that out, to find some alternatives to give my life purpose and meaning. So I think that this, as we discuss more and more, I think this expands so much more broadly than just the physical loss of a person. I think, and, ironically, when you lose a job or when you retire, it is a physical loss of your personhood, so that part of it, 6 pages, as Gail, is that her name?
Yes, yeah.
6 pages, that's the beauty of a short story. And my students loved short stories. One, because it wasn't so long to read, but
It was short.
it is short, but it was so tight and so condensed. And the meaning is that short story writer really has more of a job than a novelist does, because just doesn't
Well,
have the time to
yeah.
develop. So that's what I have to say.
Right. And our novelists, and this is a reading group. These novels that are 400 or 500 pages, they don't, I know they say this all the time, they don't have editors, and you start to lose your mind because they're just too long.
Right.
Some of these novels. And, when I see one under 100, 300 pages, I'm like, well, I'll take that one. Anyway, Evie and then Alice. Oh, wait, Judy, right. Judy, Evie, Alice.
All right, here's my question. I want to know, she's a younger woman than we are.
Yeah.
I want to know what she was going through that got her to this story.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would have never gotten here. When I'm dead, I probably won't get there. I can't face this. But I want to know what happened in her life then
Interesting.
that caused this.
Yeah. I'm Evie.
Yeah, I think that during that process, you're grieving and having lost the person that you wish they were, that they're a relationship that you were hoping to have, that maybe it wasn't, and maybe you had that dream that, they might change, they might change, and so on and so forth. And
Absolutely.
and that dream is kind of gone too, and you have to kind of come to terms with, okay, they weren't, but they were this, and so on and so forth. Because I think there's so many facets to any relationship, or to ourselves. We don't even know ourselves that well, or at least
Absolutely.
not the royal we, but some of us.
I like that. I really like that. Alice, then Terry.
Yeah, boy, Evie, that's like, wow. A lot of food for thought. But this is what I was going to say. It kind of goes along with what Evie just said and what all of you just said. This has nothing to do with this story. This is about our book club. I feel we have grown so much as a book club in terms of what we're willing to handle and discuss. And I just feel, I don't know, it warms my soul that, no, seriously, because I feel like we started out with things that were maybe a little lighter. And yes, we related to them but this is like really, I feel like really deep stuff. And I just appreciate all of you for all of your insights.
You're going to make us cry, Alice.
I'm going to cry.
Oh, no. Terry, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Well, Alice, that was remarkable that you said that. I think we all agree. And I feel like this story, I mean, we're all at a point in our lives where it feels like there's a lot of loss all around us, and we're all dealing with it. What the passage that struck me, and I don't think anyone has quoted it, on page 69, when she says, lie down next to her very carefully, wrap your arms around her. She will not hug you back. Rest your head on her shoulder. You will have to go to where she is. Close your eyes. It might hurt. It will hurt. I don't know why. I had the feeling that she was mourning a daughter. I mean, maybe I'm reading more into it, but that's what I kept coming to when we try to think of what happened with her. And when it says go to where she is, it's as though you have to try to get to the place where you can visualize where she's gone, and hopefully it's a better place, and just kind of sit with it. It's like sitting with the grief. And that passage really touched me.
So I think everyone here, I'm gonna cry. We see a daughter, but maybe it's her mom.
Also because she's young.
I'm sorry.
It could be her lover.
Oh, her
I thought it was her lover.
Okay.
Oh,
Right. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's what makes
Yeah.
it scary.
No.
If it could be all these different potential characters, I think it shows how good the story really is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mary.
On a lighter note, I just want to, again, I've said, called out Lynn twice as saying things that are really important. Short story, the thing about short stories, I decided to go back and read Edith Wharton. So I started with her short stories. Her short stories are phenomenal. Okay. Then I go to her novels, and there's so much chit chat. I always want to go, okay, let's get to it. What's the next thing in the plot? I don't want to hear about so-and-so said so-and-so to so-and-so to so-and-so to so-and-so. And the description of a room or something that's page long. And her images are wonderful, but it's just they're, 300-400 pages. I mean, they're long, and I read 3 of them in a row. And I said, I'm done. But the point is that the short stories, you couldn't put them down. And it's because she had much more control over the writing, and they were tighter. And I do think that is, it makes a discussion better. It makes, one of the things about the group is that people read the whole thing generally.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to a book group and people read 30 pages and they may have read the end, but not the middle. And they don't, and it makes it detracts from the discussion.
We've had authors, and they'll say, well, I don't want to give spoilers. And I say, listen, my people have read it all. I said, go in and tell us. Because if you haven't, that was the assignment. So I want the spoilers. Lynn.
I just did a book review of how to read a book, and there is
I gotta read that.
there is a line in there. She's giving this woman is doing a book club in a prison with young ladies, and one of the young ladies said, Harriet has told us that we have to read a book slowly, that in order to know, in order to feel more, you have to know more, so that you have to go slowly to notice more. And then that way you develop empathy for the characters. Now, what you're talking about describes my students, where if there's a long book, and even in my book club, people say, oh, I skimmed through that part in the description. Yes. In a short story, you notice more because and when you read it again, because you feel that you have the capability of reading again, as opposed to a novel, you notice more. And she said there is a central story, and then there's a meanwhile, and it's the meanwhile that people skip. In other words, what's around that central story. Yes. And I think this group really gets to the heart of the meanwhiles. They're talking, you guys are talking about all the things that input into what's happening in the story. So, and I also recommend that book, and read it slowly.
Yeah, I just downloaded it. Terry.
I'm trying to remember, was it Benjamin Franklin who said, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write a short one?
Oh,
That's very good.
yeah, that's really good.
Very, very good.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I do want to do probably just a scotch of teaching here. How does Schanoes use the folklore of the golem and Dybbuk or other supernatural elements to explore the limits of human control over life and death? And I want to review that a golem is a creature from Jewish folklore animated from inanimate matter like clay or mud, created to serve its human master, most famously Rabbi Yehuda Loew ben Bezalel of the 16th century Prague. And a Dybbuk is a malevolent spirit in Jewish folklore, believed to be the dislocated soul of a dead person that clings to a living host. So she does bring up that very imaginative and creative language. And I've been reading, you get into an author, you start reading a lot, Rebecca Cyril. And she's Jewish. It's not Jewish enough for me to do it a book club, but she's Jewish. And it's called Magical Realism. And one expiration dates. She had all of her books have like a little something in them. So I think it's interesting. We know who said, Alice, this is based on, fairy tales, and we've all read the fairy tales. Into the Woods is, that is, the first time I saw Into the Woods was at a junior high production, and they stopped after the first act.
Well, that's the kids portion.
Right.
That's what they rent to.
And so I thought, this isn't, because someone's like, oh, it's this, it's that. I go, no, it's not, because I had the junior high version. So it's interesting, taking all of this into ourselves. Thoughts on any Dybbuks, golems, a lot of
Wanted to mention-
golems. I'm
I
sorry.
think there's one book that I wanted to mention, and
Oh.
it's not at all Jewish, but it's Spinning Straw into Gold, and it's fairy tales for adults, adult versions of the fairy tales that maybe some of us grew up with.
Huh.
And I read it for an organization a number of years ago, and there's just a lot of thoughts and a lot of depth. Not Jewish, just more general, but just on the same wavelength. Spinning Straw into Gold by Joan Gould, G-O-U-L-D.
Joan Gould. Okay. And you liked it?
Sorta. I love fairy tales. Yes, I did, but I didn't grow up with a lot of fairy tales, so I had a.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. I have more questions. Any other comments before I gotta make sure I got everybody?
Well, I just had an opportunity to read this a matter of not too many minutes before we left to come here. And I could see that, and I got much out of it. But listening to all of you and all of you on remote, I am incredibly impressed with, Vanessa, your leadership, of course.
Thank you.
But the deep diving, not just skimming the surface, but deep dive into this story. And also the introspection that has come out that many of you have done, that it brings back so many memories for so many of us as we are no longer 35 years old.
Exactly.
And we're 46.
Exactly. Thank you, Chuck. Really beautiful words for us. I have another topic for us. What ethical boundaries, and somebody talked about that, I can't remember, what ethical boundaries are crossed when characters attempt to restore life?
You spoke to that.
Yes. Yeah. Andy talked about it. What boundaries?
Well,
Well,
All right, Lynn, go, and then Terry.
we just saw, my husband's doing men's group retrospective of Mel Brooks, and we just saw Frankenstein or Frankenstein.
Right. John Frankenstein.
Yeah, yes. The idea of man playing God and crossing that boundary and creating a human being. And in 1984, there was that same idea of putting babies to, creating babies. you don't know what you're going to create. I mean, you are taking life in your own hands, and it's just not, But I have a question.
Yes.
We didn't discuss these two torches that she has in her hand. Did
Yeah.
anybody
Oh.
wonder about that? You will carry
That's an
you will carry a torch in each hand as you search. And I put 4.
Well,
And I
I think she ends up with a light. I thought it was to take
Yeah.
it back to the, being a resurrected, everything was dark.
Everything was
Yeah.
dark.
But why did she go from 2 to 1?
Right.
That was my question, and when you brought that up,
Give her one of the torches.
She handed it off.
But on page 66, in the third paragraph in the center, the world will become patterns of thorns, which reminds us about the first story.
Yes.
Patterns whose repetitions you counted and memorized years ago and never thought you'd have to see again. I think that's really sort of the essence
Yeah.
of grief.
Yeah.
I
Alice
thought-
and then Merle.
Yeah, this kind of goes to what everybody just said. I'm just thinking the torches, is it like searching for meaning in all of this?
I thought it was enlightenment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
some-
also, Lynn, I agree 100% what you said is, not playing God. That's what I
yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Merle.
Just brought light.
Torches brought light.
I just thought that when you do resurrect someone, you don't know what their quality of life is going to be, and you're taking
Mhm.
risks, and you're playing God. And now in Illinois, I think we're going to have this new assisted death law, and I'm sure there will be people fighting that, and other
Yes.
people
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
that it's wonderful to die with dignity. So I think we're certainly making progress on facing these issues.
Yeah. Agreed.
But quality of life is a very important issue, so that's
Yes.
why you don't want to play
Yes.
God.
Yes. We all know what a DNR, do not resuscitate. I mean, in 2025, you know what that is. And I guess I guess if I brought in some 35, I think everybody knows. So I think that because of medical breakthroughs, because you can extend people's life, and it just becomes very difficult. You can choose to end treatment if it's prolonging your life, but not the quality of your life. And so this week we had a death in our congregation, Floyd King. And he was really a past president, a stalwart with a big shiver here. And I was standing by his wife, Sherry, and she says to me, I just want to tell Floyd. When you're at the shiva or the funeral, you want to tell that person, oh my God, look who's here. Oh, can you believe what so-and-so said? And it was so tangible for her. And I've been, my father died. You just want to talk about it. Or one more word, one more story, one more something. Lynn.
There is a story, I can't remember, some of you probably heard it, about a famous writer who was on his deathbed, and his grandson came to visit him, and he gave him the eulogy that he was going to give him when he died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And some of you probably heard this story, and the man was so delighted to hear what his grandson had to say to him that I was rethinking this whole thing.
It's a good thing to do.
It's a good thing to do for a person.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Mary, then Andy.
So 20 years ago, probably, I was at the New York Public Library in New York City, and the New York Times had all the obituaries displayed, including living people.
Whoa.
Okay, and it's before cell phones, because I probably would have gone around going, oh, Barack Obama, let's take a look at what they say. I mean, it was really interesting, because it was all sorts of people that have, national.
Well, they're ready to go because
But they were showing that they were living people.
Yeah.
So when you said that, wouldn't it be, I wonder how you feel about reading your obituary from the New York Times before you're gone.
Yeah. Andy, Terry, Julie. Andy.
Well, just to
piggyback on that. I saved something once about all of these wonderful people who never had any obituaries, who had contributed so much. Most of them were women, a lot of them were women, minority women. And I just thought I owe it to them, I said
Yes.
one. And then the other thing is that I think when you're talking about this end of life and this quality, that this now is a question all through our life. And certainly at the beginning, when, they're pushing the weeks and what they can save and what,
Pushing the what?
well, we have a 15-week fetus that we can. And
Yes,
this is-
yes, yes, yes,
I
yes.
think that there's
Yes.
really no,
Yes,
they're very
Totally,
similar, you think.
completely agree with
The
you. Yeah.
questions and,
What is life?
we have a cousin who was he still works in neonatology. And he said, there are times when I will tell the parents, this is not, you cannot keep pushing
No,
this.
no,
It's
agreed.
the end.
Terry, Julie and Barb. Julie, did you have your hand up? Well, Terry, go ahead.
Well, it just reminded me of a friend who passed away a number of years ago, and she knew that she was dying, and she had a celebration of life. She invited a group of women, it was all women, who sat together. I was flattered to be a part of it. I was not her best friend, but I felt like it was a flattering thing that she felt I was important enough to include me. And everyone went around the table and talked about, just recalled stories of things that they had shared. And I found myself thinking, everybody should do this
Oh, this
because
sounds great.
you do feel
Very brave.
when you go to
That
a
is
really
brave.
good funeral and
Very
you
brave.
find out all
Yes.
these things
Yeah.
about people
Very
and that
good
you didn't
funeral.
know.
Hear,
I went
hear.
to a funeral and I heard that a woman was a biologist and she had a species named after her.
Yeah.
I never would have known that about this
Exactly.
woman.
Exactly.
And for this woman in particular that I spoke of earlier, to have that was was so meaningful for her and for all of us. We really felt like we were, just being a part of something remarkable. It really was.
Here. Julie, then Barb.
Picking up on what was just said about the grandfather whose grandson read the eulogy, and also something was said before about, I just want to say one more thing. It's and we've all, I think, have had that feeling at some point, but what it makes me think about is all the things that we wished we had said. Well, now is the time to say them, not to think afterwards, this is what I should have said. Look at the joy. I mean, you would probably be hesitant to say to somebody, here's your eulogy that I'm going to read. Because it's kind of a punch in the face, but but death is inevitable, and the grandfather knew he was going to be dying, and look at the joy and satisfaction that that it gave him, it validated his life to hear his grandson speak like that. And we've all been to funerals where we've heard children, or especially the grandchildren. It's so impressive when you see what somebody's life meant to a grandchild. But the grandparent may never have realized the impact that they made. So speak up.
Here. Barb.
Okay. On the flip side of of that, rather than hearing your eulogy before, Julie and I were actually in a writing class, and one of the assignments was writing an ethical will. Which is something that can be read after you die. And it has nothing to do with your possessions or your money it has to do with what your beliefs and what your values are. And I know, I don't know if Julie did it. I didn't do it, but it was something, I don't know if
Tell us that.
I don't know if she ever got around to it. I know I didn't get around to it, but it was something that I had discussed with
She's
my
still
husband.
thinking. It's not too late.
Not too late. Yes,
Right.
I like that, Ellen.
Just want to pick up on that in Jewish life through, I don't know if it's so much, any people are doing it so much now, but there was a time not that long ago in Jewish history when that was a very common thing to do. And I do have a book of ethical wills that were written like in the 1800s or something. And it's very impressive because like Barbara said, it's all about your values. And of course you can we all know that you can try to convey your values, and
Right.
whether it works or not is something else, or whether anybody wants to hear it. But it's a very Jewish thing.
Here. It's 11:04. Oh, Andy, one more
That's
time.
okay. Well, I just like the idea of, it's not just writing, having a party before you die. This is something that applies to other parts of your life. That's what I like. I was invited to something after I got the invitation before the 2016 election, 2016.
Mhm.
And I had no idea. I didn't know this person that well. All these women came together in her home the day after that horrible day.
Uh-huh.
And we were, from different parts, and it was so comforting. And it had nothing to do with dying or anything.
Yeah.
But it was but it's just something to think about in that way. And then the other thing is that I've been thinking about the ancestors that are farther back and who was like, you have their names, you see a family tree, and it really isn't that meaningful. I want to know, and that's what I was thinking, that to write something, this is who I am, and 3 generations, oh, maybe I got that trait or something.
Right.
That it would be interesting.
I think that's good. Sounds like maybe a Sunday adult enrichment. I'll let you know because I think ethical wills are very important.
This is not quite so formal.
What?
Not as quite as formal.
Right. Well, but you gotta write it down.
Yeah, you gotta write it down.
And special thanks, Chuck. I thought what you said was very meaningful to me and to everybody here. We're just glad the Bagdads are here. And we meet again on Wednesday, December 3rd, and we're reading, I just looked it up, something Alice, a Fantasia. And this one is also not so long. That first one was like 50 pages. And I was like, oy vey, they're gonna kill me. Anyway, it's good to see everyone. This Sunday is Linda Muskin's husband, John Cody, talking about being at WBBM newscaster. So again, this group A knows what about WBBM, remembers the newscasters. So this is fertile territory. And I just want to remind everyone that Friday, December, I gotta look it up here, 19th is our big Hanukkah party. And it's going to be Shabbat services, a latke dinner, a festive oneg. So you do have to register. And we'd like you to register for Sunday as well, just so I know who's coming and, to make sure that there's enough locks. We went to the church last week and it was really a great program. And everyone gathered around me and said, Vanessa, there's no locks. I'm like, I'm not in charge of the locks here. That's and I tell our maintenance guys, I said, listen, if the speaker doesn't show, they'll be upset. But if the locks and bagels don't show, I will have a riot on my hands. So I've ordered it for this week. Should be a lot of fun. It's great to see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Oh, there's a chesed tea tomorrow too at 1:30.
What?
Chesed.
John Cody's at 10?
Yes.
Happy Thanksgiving to
Happy
everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Bye.